Wednesday, November 19th, 2023. The first item of business is approval of the report from the December 20th, 2022 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. If there isn't any corrections or questions, I'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
I've got a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion, a second, to approve the December 20th, 2022 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. The next item of business is 23-000164, Angela Roberts, public hearing and action on a request for a variance from the front yard setback to construct a single-family residence at 1101 High Street, parcel ID 3401997. Before I open the public hearing, we'd have a staff report on this item.
Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to summarize the request.
Thank you. So item number 2 is from Angela Roberts, which is a public hearing and action on a request for a variance from a front yard setback to construct a single-family residence at 1111 High Street. So just some quick background on this lot and the history on the lot. There was previously a single-family home here. There was a raise order issued by the city in September of 2019, and a permit for demolition was obtained in November of 2019, and the home was subsequently raised. So the lot has been vacant since that time. It is quite a narrow lot. The configuration is narrow to begin with, and then the eastern property line angles as you go southward to make it even more narrow progressively as you move south on the lot. The applicant is proposing construction of a 1,589 square foot single family dwelling, and I just want to note this is just slightly above the minimum required for a home, the minimum floor area. So it's quite modest by standards set forth in the zoning code, and it's just a little bit over what's required. Here's some photos of the property. The one on the left is taken from the north looking south. The one on the right is from the south looking north. So as you can see, it's a residential neighborhood. It's immediately surrounded by residences, and even to a greater degree as you move out, it's pretty conclusively residential. And so a single family home is what we typically expect to see on this lot. So looking at the standards of review and why the variance request is before us today, the first criteria is, do unique physical limitations exist on the property, including steep slopes or wetlands that are not generally shared by other properties? And staff's analysis is yes, there are unique property limitations. The lot is both substandard in lot width and substandard in overall lot size. And then the angled property lines further complicate these existing difficulties by adding less width as you move south on the lot. It's long and narrow, so it's a little bit difficult to work with in terms of traditional construction. The second criteria is the request due to existence of an unnecessary hardship. So another way to think about that is, can reasonable use of this property be made without the variance? And staff is saying yes, the proposed modest residence would be considered reasonable use of the property. It's not an unusual development style or, a really large proposal or anything like that. It's just a very typical residential property, which would be considered reasonable use of the property, and it cannot be constructed without this variance into the front yard setback, a slight variance. It's a 1 foot 9 inch request from the front yard setback on 11th Avenue North specifically. And then the third criteria, does the requested variance impact the interests of the neighbors, the entire community, and the general public? No, the marginal increase in intensity of the 1 foot 9 inch front yard setback encroachment will not negatively impact the neighbors, community, or general public. So looking at the intensity, typically we look at use and intensity, and it would just be a marginal increase in intensity to encroach into the setback. And I do also want to note, our zoning code does have an allowance for setback averaging in the more established neighborhoods where we do an averaging of surrounding properties. And that's how we arrived at the 17-foot front yard. I know sometimes you're used to seeing a 25-foot front yard setback requirement, but we did do an averaging to try to, accommodate the proposal without the variance request. And even with that taken into account, it was still pretty difficult what they brought forward was kind of a narrower design. And that being said, it was still difficult to accommodate the proposal. So staff recommendation is to approve the variance request. In our view, unique property characteristics do exist. Also, hardship exists because compliance with the front yard setback requirement is unreasonably preventing the applicant from using the property for a permitted purpose. This would be the purpose that we'd most likely expect to see in this neighborhood, a single-family dwelling. And there is no negative impact anticipated to the neighborhood, community, or the general public. And I'll turn it back over to Chair Laspa.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing by asking 3 times for people that would speak in favor of this request, and then followed by 3 times that people would wish to speak against this request. So we'll start the public hearing with, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this request? Could you come up to the podium?
Should I start over? Yes, please. Okay, so I would like to improve that area over there by bringing in a single-family residential home. I have tried to do bump-ins to accommodate to that setback, but unfortunately, that then pulls me away from the other requirement for being the square footage requirement for the 3-bedroom house that I'm building or requesting to build. So that's all I have to say. I'm just trying to better the neighborhood there on that portion of it.
Okay, is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this request? And third and final time, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this request? Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak against this request? Would you come up to the podium?
Hi, I'm Amy Endy. I live right on the line, and I live at 1121 High Street, right next to the property, and I object to this. It is too small for that size of a home. I mean, if it was a single-family resident, it'd be fine, but if it was a rental, we had so much trouble with rentals before. Thank you.
Okay, I will ask again, is there anyone here who would like to speak against this request? And third and final time, is there anyone here who'd like to speak against this request? Seeing no one, I am going to turn it over to the board for discussion and possible motion.
I drove by the property yesterday. Yes, it is a tiny lot, but I believe that a good builder, contractor will do a nice job on that corner lot. And maybe even a 2-story building would be large enough. If not, it'll be your basic 800-900 square foot home. But I think you get a good builder, good contractor, you'll do great. Amen.
If If there is no further questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I
Well, then-
move to accept the variance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and second to approve the variance. I will do a roll call vote. Jerry Feith? Aye. Lee Gossick? Bruce Kluver? Peggy Montag? And I'm Dave Laspa. I also vote aye. Motion carried. Okay, the next item is 23-001163 Heather Yeager, public hearing and action on a request for a variance from a corner side yard setback to construct a fence at 1241 14th Street South, parcel ID 3406969. And before we do the public hearing again, I'll have a staff report.
Thank you, Chair Laspa and members of the zoning board. So this item before you is Heather Yeager is the applicant, and she's requesting a fence to encroach in the corner side yard setback, into the corner side yard setback at her residence at 1241 14th Street South. So this is a site plan that the homeowner has prepared, and there was a fence at this location previously, but as you know, when new fences are proposed or any new construction is proposed, we need to review it in light of the current zoning ordinance. And so the proposed 6-foot fence is above the height requirement in that corner side yard setback. If the fence were to be located behind the building line of the home or behind the 25-foot setback, whichever's closer, then she would be able to go to the 6-foot in height. But because it is neither, then it is considered a violation within that setback area. So these are some photos of the applicant's home. This is the existing fence on the property. I believe it's 5-foot height now. And so this is within that corner side yard setback, again, not behind the building line of the home or behind that 25-foot front yard setback. So standards of review for this item are the same as the previous item or for any variance request. Do unique physical limitations exist on the property? In staff's view, no, the lot and site configuration are consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, and there are many available options for fencing on the property that would meet code requirements. Second is the request due to the existence of an unnecessary hardship. In other words, can reasonable use of this property be made without the variance? And we would say there's no unnecessary hardship, and there is the ability to construct a fence in other ways to use a different configuration if the 6-foot height is required, or if that's more the desired location, then it would have to be under the 4-foot height requirement. And the third criteria, does the requested variance impact the interests of the neighbors, the entire community, and the general public? In staff's view, there's not an overwhelming negative impact. It's just that these are the setback standards established, and setbacks relate to both privacy and safety implications, and that the fence in this corner side yard setback at the 6-foot height could set precedent for similar requests. So staff's recommendation is to deny the proposal due to the absence of unique property characteristics, the absence of an unnecessary hardship, and again, not because necessarily we feel there's inherent harm, just that this is what the zoning code has outlined, and there could be safety and privacy implications. And I'll turn it back over to Chair Laspa.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing again by asking 3 times for people to speak for, and then 3 times for people to speak against. Okay, anybody who's in favor of this item, please come forward to the pedestal and state your name and if you're for it.
Good afternoon. I am Heather Yeager. I am for the proposal. Obviously, it's my own proposal. I do understand that the staff's recommendation to deny. I understand that based on the current existing zoning requirements. And I'm here today before you to ask the board to consider my request for the following reasons. At the time of the construction projects that were noted in the staff's overall recommendation, and that would have been the pool in 2021 and then the deck in 2022. Those now subsequently would prevent me from constructing a 6-foot fence along the building line of the home, as Carrie had indicated, on that south side of the property. I had no reason at that time to believe I wouldn't eventually be able to construct the fence, which was actually the intended third phase of this overall project. I did it in phases for budget reasons, but also for construction reasons, because 2 of the projects went late into the summer of the years indicated. I also primarily did not foresee there being an issue due to the existence of privacy fences in my direct neighborhood on corner lots all along Daly Avenue. Those 5-foot, or rather, I should say 6-foot privacy fences all extend directly to the property line along Daly. So just visually, in my own mind, and then again, with regard to my own existing fence, I never saw ahead enough to see it as being a potential problem. So I do want to be clear that I didn't go into this project thinking, hey, I know this isn't allowed, but I'm going to do it anyway and try to, get away with something here. That was never my intent. I firmly believed at the time that it would never be an issue for the reasons I outlined. The proposed location, as Carrie indicated, of the new 6-foot fence is the same current location of the 5-foot chain link fence that already exists on the property, and for that reason, I don't foresee any additional safety or privacy implications that would exist for any of the citizens or neighbors in the neighborhood or citizens in general, nor does it impede the current vision triangle for traffic at the corner of 14th and Daly Avenue. As you can see from the site plan and the pictures attached, the current fence is 15 feet from the property line and 25 feet in from the roadway on that south side, and does not impede public right-of-way. I had several neighbors actually contact me after receiving the letter that is generated once my application was submitted. I provided all the neighbors that I could make contact with a copy of my site plan, and I have with me actually signatures from 9 of them that I spoke with, all approving of my proposal as they saw it, and if anyone would like me to provide that, I certainly can. Regarding precedent, I don't see that there would be at least a perceived precedent set as it's meant to replace an existing fence that's already in place, the only difference being the material and a 1-foot increase in height. Additionally, my fence would be set back farther than other existing privacy fences along Daly Avenue, as I had mentioned before, that exist today at 1240 14th Street, 1241 13th Street, and 1241 12th Street, all along that Daly Avenue corridor. None are built directly off the line behind the primary structure, and I do understand, at least from prior conversations with Carrie, that I believe those were built prior to the current zoning regulations, but in terms of perceived precedent, I wanted to bring that up. Additionally, I can provide addresses and pictures of at least 9 other corner properties within my neighborhood that I've seen daily on my walks that have fences that would not meet current zoning requirements, and at least 3 of those were permitted and built within the last 5 years, the most recent being in 2019. And that fence was actually also built in the same type of project. There was a pool built on what would actually be considered the side yard of the property. That fence is currently 7 feet from the property line. While I do understand that the zoning laws can and do change, you can understand why a person like myself would be under the assumption that my eventual plans to build the fence, once my other projects were complete, wouldn't have come under question at the time. My only other option at this point would be to remove and rebuild the deck and pool to accommodate the fence, which is obviously very cost prohibitive, as that would amount to over $30,000. The staff's proposal that Carrie had indicated that I have the option to build a 4-foot fence within that location doesn't meet the need for security or privacy. One other point that I did want to make, and I'm not here today, obviously, to try to get you to change zoning laws, but I did want to note that the two like cities within central Wisconsin, likened to Wisconsin Rapids, meaning Marshfield and Stevens Point, that their current zoning requirements, in the city of Marshfield, for instance, the requirement for a 6-foot privacy fence is 3 feet from the property line on the street side or non-primary side, as they refer to it, of a corner property. And that would be beginning at the front facade line of the primary structure. In Stevens Point, a 6-foot high privacy fence in the rear yard street setback, which is how they refer to it in their language, is permitted within a 2-foot setback from the property line along the portion of the rear yard adjoining the street. And I do have copies of the zoning requirements if anyone would like to review those as well. Again, as I said, I'm not here asked today to have you change the current zoning requirements. I'm here primarily to ask that my variance be approved to allow for my existing 5-foot fence at the same location on that south side, to allow for a 6-foot privacy fence in that location. And I thank you all for your consideration.
Okay, for a second time, is there anyone else here in favor of this request? Go ahead.
I'm the alderman in this area, and I met with Heather Yeager last Thursday. And she mentioned she's talked to many neighbors. They're all in favor of it. There wasn't anybody that objected to it. And I just feel her request is only going to make this neighborhood much better than what it is right now. All I can say is that I agree with your request very much, and I hope the board, at least look at the property and, your decision and such. Thank you.
And for the third and final time, is there anyone here in favor of this request? Okay, now I'll ask, is there anyone here against this request? And for a second time, is there anyone here who's against this request? And then third and final time, is there anyone here who's against this request? Close the public hearing and turn it over to the zoning board for discussion and a possible motion.
Yeah, I have a question for the zoning. On this site plan, for like the site on Daly, would they have to come, how much would they have to come in?
So for a 6-foot height, just for sake, for the conversation, let's just assume for 6-foot height.
Yeah,
So it's, the way it reads is the required front yard setback or the building line, whichever's closer. So the front yard setback distance is 25 feet. A lot of times the home building line is closer than that, and I believe in this case it would also be the case. So until they got to the building line of the home, then they could go to the 6 feet height. Until that point, it would be 4 feet, unless the 25-foot required setback came first.
so they'd have to go match like that garage. They would have to,
Yep.
okay.
I think in this case, I think that's like 20 feet maybe, about. So I think in this case that comes first, and then they could go to the 6 feet at the building line of the home.
So that would cut into the deck then.
22, okay, thank you. So 22, so that would come first, so the building line of the home would be the point where it could be 6 feet in height.
Okay, so the front, like, it jogs out there, that's fine. It's just, it has to be even with the house.
So the front wouldn't exist, so if it went to if it started at well, I guess it could, but if it starts at the building line of the home, usually the building serves as the fence until that point, if they do that,
Yeah.
and then the 6 foot continues off of that point.
All right, so that would cut right into that deck, is what they're saying? Okay.
Yep, which is newly constructed, that was all newly constructed.
Yeah,
Lee, did you have a question?
You've done your homework, that's for sure. Marshfield, et cetera, et cetera. I also took a look at your property yesterday. It's a nice property, by the way. Nosy question. Do you have a list with you of those 9 people? Okay, I don't want to see it, I just wanted to know if you had it. Okay, good enough for me, thank you.
Guess my mic was on. I guess I can proceed with asking dumb questions. Not understanding this drawing very well. The orange line is existing,
Proposed,
proposed.
yeah. It could match, it probably is both, because. Okay, okay.
On the south side and I should say the east side. If I do, from a purely permitted standpoint.
If you're responding, could you approach the podium, just to have you on record for the video? Thank you.
Sure. So the south side orange line, in this particular case, the south side and the east side orange line would be congruent with both existing and proposed. The north side is actually where I plan to extend it out a little bit farther, but it's still 10 feet within the inside of my property line. So even on that north side, it's not encroaching. But I know that's not a portion of the fence that's in question with regard to the variance.
So asking staff then, this green line would meet the requirements of the code?
Yes, because that's not a street side. So that would meet.
I knew I saw that key someplace. The only comment that I would have to make is that from an architectural point of view, I think the fence stands up very well. Aesthetically, it would be pleasing. Let me qualify that and say, or go backwards a bit. That isn't my only comment. The other comment I have is that in the code, again, a question for staff, aren't there pretty specific requirements for safety in terms of fencing where pools are fenced off?
Yes, so that's more referenced in the building code, but yes, there are very specific requirements about what's required in terms of pools.
And do you know what those are?
I don't off the top of my head.
No, there's certain height requirements, I think maybe 4 feet minimum, lockable gate and so forth around a pool.
You know, that's what I remember too. In terms of fencing off a pool, where the property is as accessible as this is in the city, I think that's an important consideration, that the fence be high enough, the fence be complete, and it looks as if that's the intent here. So I think that's probably a good argument for the fence.
I would like to comment on, usually with fences on corners, you've got issues with the vision triangle. In this case, there is no issue because they're back far enough. They're even behind that shed, so coming around the corner, that shed blocks you more than the fence will. So I don't see an issue with anything safety or vision at all, even though it's on a corner.
That's correct. There is a vision triangle requirement on that southeast corner as well, because there is an alley, but the applicant is well outside of that. She has that measured very clearly, and what she's proposing is outside of that vision triangle area to the rear of the property.
Just another point of information, not that it makes any difference to the deliberation here, but is that an alley? Is that a dedicated alley?
Our code reads, there's language, it's if it's travelable or if it's available to be accessed by automobile or something like that, and I think that there is a curb cut there. So it meets, even though it's kind of an odd, it's not paved, it's not, the way our code reads, it is considered one because it can be accessed by vehicle. But she has measured that out, and the proposed fence is not included in that vision triangle area.
So a question to the owner here. The orange line is, except on the south and the east, new fence, and then would all of the chain link be replaced?
I'm still debating on the back portion, at least for this year, because I'm still waiting on a cost estimate. I'm, as I noted, I'm looking to do a composite privacy fence, mainly due to that, you know, they last quite a bit longer, even over vinyl, and definitely no maintenance as you would have with wood. Potentially, it might be cost prohibitive for me to do it entirely this year. But my hope is actually to do it entirely, yes. I considered initially keeping the chain link on the rear portion of the property. However, because I did recently take some trees out on that back corner that were dying, there's still quite a bit of vision through there, which gives me some concern, especially since I do have a lot of children that go up and down the alleyway that you were speaking of. I don't want to invite anything. So I'm looking potentially to fence the entire property with the 6-foot.
If there isn't any other questions, is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we accept the variance.
We have a motion to accept the variance. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance, and I'll go through I'll go through as a roll call vote. Jerry Fee?
Chairman, can I interject quick? With regards to any action and reasoning, Some of the stuff I recorded and just want to confirm that this may be the kind of the reasoning for the request, are that it's aesthetically pleasing. Fencing is required for the pool. There are no issues with the vision triangle and no detriment to the public or at least the neighbors within the vicinity. I think those are the four things that I noted in the conversation prior to the motion, and I just want to confirm that that would be then, I guess, the reasoning for the motion.
I would like to add one other possible reason for accepting the variance, and that is it would, if plans are followed through on, would eliminate the chain link fence, which I think is another thing that sets precedent in town, which should not be set.
Okay?
Okay, I'll begin the roll call vote. Jerry Feith,
Aye.
Lee Gossick, Bruce Kluver, Peggy Montag, and I'm going to vote no because I do not believe it met the variance or the criteria for a variance, so the motion carries 4-1. Okay, the next item of business is adjourn. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Motion and second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, none, motion carried, meeting's adjourned.